Overcoming Adversity podcast. I'm your host, Michael Allison. Before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. When it comes to overcoming adversity and just being resilient and just personal growth and personal development and just having the goal just to aim high and want high success for yourself, I have the perfect guest today. Dr. Brook Stemon is here to talk to us about her story, how she made it to the level of success, and how she overcame her adversities. I can't wait to get into this conversation. Let's go. Dr. Brooks, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you here. I've listened to your story, checked you out a little bit, and you have an amazing story. And I have a deep affinity for you because you're also from the South, where I didn't grow up, but I spent a good bit of my career, my life in Georgia. So I can't wait to get into this conversation with you.
I know, I'm excited.
So if you can, Dr. Brooks, you've attained a doctoral degree, right? And I know that you faced some adversities in your life, but to get to this level of success and always like aiming so high for yourself, where did that start and how did that start for you?
So that actually started when I was a child. I grew up in a small town in Alabama. We may have 500 people in the town. And so when you grow up in a small town, everyone can be closed-minded. And so I would always be limited to what I can believe. Like if I would say, oh, when I grow up, I want to be a doctor, they would say, I don't know, maybe they would kind of redirect that because, they were so closed-minded. And as a child, I knew that I wanted to be so much more. And I used to always say, oh, I can't wait to get out of this place. And so I guess it would be those around me just push me and encourage me to want more because they were, used to working at the mills, the plants, the different things in our town. And a lot of them never really traveled outside of the town. And so for me, small town pushed me into wanting to see what else was out there in the world. And so just as a child being told, to dream smaller or to, cast your net a little closer, it just like pushed me to want more for myself. And
Wow,
so as a child, I just wanted more.
I want to touch on something a little bit because you said some profound things. Our environment could actually keep us like in bondage, or it could actually release us. And then you also mentioned something in regards to those people that's within your environment could actually mess with your limiting beliefs about yourself in regards to like what you're trying to attain in regards to your goals and your dreams. Can you speak about who were some people that were there for you to help you even think bigger and dream bigger in regards to like just getting out of your current environment?
So I have an aunt and she is a school teacher. She actually recently retired probably about 3 or 4 years ago. She did 32 years in special education.
Mhm.
And so my aunt was one of the people in my family that were educated. And so even when I just, let's say 7 days a week, I would hear those limited beliefs, but a couple times a year, I would be able to go and be with my aunt in a different environment around people that were educated, master's degrees, doctorate degrees. And so those people would speak life into me. And so a couple of times a year, I would have life spoken into me and I would hold on to it deep. And I would remember those things when I had other people telling me, I don't know, that's kind of far-fetched, or, I don't know if you can quite do that, because I can remember one time my aunt asking, if you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be? And this was a different aunt. And I said, Dr. Martin Luther King. And she was like, that's far-fetched, and so that's the type of things that I had to deal with. And so anytime that I can go see my aunt that was the educator, I would just knew, she would fill my toolbox up with hopes and dreams and faith. And she would, tell me you can be anything that you want to be. I just need you to pay attention in school and I just really need you to focus. And so it was my aunt was the person that really painted the picture of greater for me.
Wow. So Dr. Brooks, I hear you tell me of your aunt and these people like actually like painting a picture for you for things to be better. I wanted you to touch a little bit on what was it like to grow up with your mom and dad, and if you had any siblings, and what was that environment like for you?
Okay, so when I was born, my parents were married. But when I was 4 or 5 years old, there was some domestic violence and alcoholism. And so my parents got divorced. And so it was my mom and my three brothers and I. I am the youngest. And so you had high school educated lady. My mom probably was in her early 20s with four children. And
Mm,
so we grew up with necessities. And so what I mean by that was we always had a place to live, we always had food, we always had love, but what we didn't have was those extra things. So you know how kids get to play sports, kids get to travel, go on vacation. We did not have that. And we didn't have a relationship with my father. When my father divorced my mom, he essentially divorced us. And so I
wow.
experienced my first heartbreak from my dad because we just did not have that relationship with him. It was a lot of pursuing him, trying to force him to be a father, and he just didn't have the capacity to do so. And I didn't recognize that until I was older, like in my 20s and 30s. That's when I began to recognize, because I had the words to articulate, that my father did not have the capacity to be a father. And so growing up with my mom, what she taught us was how to survive. Like my mom always had to feed four kids. She always had to keep our, power on, keep a roof over our head, and she had limited resources and she didn't have any help from my father. And so what I learned from my mom was how to survive. Like by any means necessary, you have every resource at your disposal to make sure that you have, your basic necessities. And so that's one trait that I get from my mom, is that endurance, that perseverance, that don't give up, don't let anyone, tell you that you can't make it. Even though my mom wasn't college educated, even though my mom didn't travel the world and explore, she had that mentality that you have to fight to survive. No one is going to hand you anything. And so that's one thing that I learned, just growing up from my mom, that you have to put forth your best effort because the world is not going to give it to you.
Absolutely. I could hear the drive, I could hear the passion, I could hear the tenacity within your voice right now. If you could, I know that growing up as a child now, like your dad was not there and he was absent, right? But I could hear all that drive within you. What was it that propelled you, that drove you to actually not even worry about that so much, I would say, but still continue to thrive without a dad absent in your life to still attain all of these big goals?
It's interesting because what I didn't recognize then was I almost had like a fight or flight response to not having a father, because what I recognize now is that I actually put up like a shield around myself. And what I did was I wouldn't allow people to love me deep. I had superficial love for people. And I think in a sense that kind of protected me and it kept me focused, because I would not allow anyone to get close enough to me to hurt me. And so I was kind of reacting from a place of, let me keep you here. In the event that you leave, I won't be affected or impacted. And so I recognized that later, after I got married, that I had built a wall up and I wouldn't be vulnerable around people. And so I think that detaching myself actually helped me to be able to achieve my goals and reach my goals, because I put a lot of trust and faith in God, but a lot of trust in myself, and I wouldn't allow people to help me. And I noticed that that was pride, but I didn't recognize all of this until later. But I was able to achieve my goals because I kind of just took a flight and flight approach with my dad. I was like, let me just fight this out. And then it wasn't until maybe a couple of years ago that I really began to recognize that I was impacted by that relationship.
Wow. That resonates so much with me because when I hear that, I'm one to like compartmentalize things in regards to like I have to set this to the side and I
Mhm.
have to keep on going, whether it was bad news or good news. It's kind of like the same way you like keep your eyes on the prize sort of
Yeah.
thing. So I want to talk a little bit about someone going after your doctoral degree because I look at when I look at the whole playing field and things like that, you don't see a lot of people or represented and say that's a goal that I do want to go after. What made you say I want to go after this doctoral degree?
So, what made me want to pursue higher education was I've always felt like I was at a disadvantage in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
One, because I'm an African American female, and two, we're just not represented a lot in corporate. And
Mm-hmm.
so, what I would recognize was even though I could be the smartest in the room, I could be the most capable in the room, a lot of the times I wasn't called upon because, I was the minority and just because I wasn't seen as an expert. And so originally the pursuit for the degree was to be the SME, the subject matter expert in my field, and just to be able to get the opportunity to come to the roundtable. And so that's initially what the pursuit of the degree was, just to help me in my career. But as I began to pursue the degree, my actual why changed.
Mm.
And so the why changed because at first I was doing it just to get recognition in a room that I wasn't recognized.
I want to follow up on that. So, if you could talk a little bit about once you were able to attain that, right? What type of doors opened up for you, and then can you touch a little bit about what became your why?
So when I was actually before I even earned the degree, when people in leadership and management will, oh my God, Brooks is pursuing a doctorate degree. And so then I was able to go to the meetings, I was able to get called upon for my expertise in my area. I work in government. And so I was able to, go to those meetings. I was able to, give my input and give strategies, and it was all because they heard that I was pursuing this higher education when the higher education did not impact the competencies that I already brought to the company or the
Exactly.
organization. And so it was that persona or that perspective that changed about me. Like, wow, she's educated and she's pursuing, this degree. And it was almost like a light for them went off. It's like I became valued, like valuable like a stock. And it was interesting, like my value went up tremendously just because people heard that I was pursuing a degree.
you know, so it's interesting you brought that up. I have a good friend and I listened to her podcast and I listened to some things that she put out. And she said something, and if you could talk a little about it, she said women in the industry are so underpaid because I don't know what being compensated, but she said unless they do certain things, they to get to that equal level of pay where they feel valued, they have to do lots of things and stuff like that. In regards to like their counterpart that they probably have more degrees than, been in business or been working for longer than them, but being underpaid. Did you ever experience anything like that? Or if you could talk a little bit about that?
Yes. And so even with a master's, I wasn't paid with my counterparts, and my counterparts had maybe high school education. And so when the rumor got out that I was pursuing my doctorate, it wasn't until that point that I was actually able to earn over six figures.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Wow.
was, underpaid and underappreciated and underrecognized in the workplace. And so it was just, I felt like in order for me to be able to reach my full potential in my career, I had to have the education to back me up. Even though prior to the education, I was more than competent, I had the knowledge, I had the experience, I was not recognized for that. And so I needed the degree at the time in order for me to be able to get into those conference rooms, in order for me to be able to get into those meetings, in order for me to be able to get the recognition that I deserved and that I worked for in my industry.
So, pursuing all of these things and understanding your value and your worth, do you think that drive was attributed from your growing up?
Yes, because what it did was it reminded me of all the people that told me I could not. It reminded me of all the people that told me that I was, kind of outlandish with my thinking, with my mentality. And so what I recognized was when I came into corporate, those same mindsets was in a corporate setting. And so then I had to almost prove to them, oh, I'm going to show you. One way or another, I will show you that I deserve not only to be in the room, but I deserve to be at the head of the table. And so I will show you. So if that's a Jedi mind trick on you, in order for you to let me in, you feel I have to be educated, I'll come educated.
I want to dig a little bit deeper here. So, understanding what you just shared with me, like you're in a room or you're in situations and obstacles, adversities where you now have to like figure out ways and strategize, and it's kind of like you're in a way to prove yourself, sort of, kind of. What are some things, including your mindset, or some strategies that you were putting in place to make sure that you are always going to be successful and shine?
So the first thing that I had to do was I always do like self-evaluation, self-examination of myself, because even though a lot of my drive is to prove to other people that I can do it, at the end of the day, it's also to prove to myself that, listen, Brooks, regardless of whatever you face, you have everything that you need to be able to make it happen. And so it was one, just trying to stay focused on, okay, because my ultimate goal for myself is always to inspire. And so even if a lot of the choices that I made was kind of driven by people putting limitations on me,
Yeah.
it still was fueled by my desire to inspire, because I do have a daughter, and I always want my daughter to see me as someone that inspired other women, or inspired other people, that regardless of how you start, you can still finish strong. And so I always try to just look into myself and make sure that, one, I'm not being arrogant, because sometimes when people try to limit you, or when people put you in a box, you can become arrogant. And so I always wanted to keep humility, and so I would always do self-examination. Okay, Brooks, let's just make sure that your motive is good here. Let's make sure that your heart posture is good here. Let's make sure that you are not allowing these people to change who you are. And so I always did self-examination. And once I did self-examination to make sure that my motives was pure, then I would take the necessary steps in order to achieve those goals. So that means I would write it out. The word of God says, write it out, make it plain. So I would always write it out. And I would always, okay, Brooks, is this achievable? And if it wasn't achievable, it was something that I would put as a long-term goal, because sometimes if you don't accomplish your goals, you begin to get insecure. You will begin to feel like, I can't do this. And so I would be realistic about my goals, and I would be realistic about the time frame that it would take to achieve them. But I would just always go back to my why, which is always to inspire.
Wow. So, Brooks, you said something interesting, and I want to see if there's any correlation here for yourself. So, you grew up in a family where dad left, grew up with your mom, aunt was encouraging you, and some limiting beliefs in regards to all aspects of growing up. Now you're a woman that you mentioned you have a husband, you mentioned you have a daughter, and so you have a family now. So, can you talk a little bit about what are some things that, when it comes to your why and your purpose and your drive, what are some of those things that you're looking from, maybe look and see what your past and your upbringing was like, and how you're implementing some of those things inside of your, like, your family dynamics as a businesswoman now too as well?
So when I grew up, my mom parented from a place of stress. And so in our household, there was a lot of yelling. There was a lot of not allowing us to communicate. I grew up in that era of, because I said so.
Yeah.
And so when I became a parent, and when I began to build my family, I wanted to teach my daughter communication skills. I wanted to teach my daughter that you have a voice. At 0 months, you have a voice at 17 years old. And so some of the things that I brought into my household is I allow her to speak. I allow her to be able to communicate to me how she's feeling, how my actions made her feel. And so I let her have an equal state in how she's being raised. And so that was something that was completely different from when I grew up. When I grew up, we got spankings. I knew that I did not want to spank my daughter because I wanted her to be able to use her words. I wanted her to be able to process her anger, process those emotions. And so that's another thing that I brought into my household. We don't hit in my household. And I also brought into my household, I let my daughter believe whatever she wants to believe as far as what she can be. You know, she says, I want to be president. Okay, well, these are some steps that we need to take to make sure that you are able to be president. And so in my house, we don't have that limited where we put limitations on one another. If you think it's possible, because the word says that nothing is too hard for God, nothing is impossible with him. We are a Christian family, so we believe that we can accomplish anything that we set our mind to.
All right, so you just hit home for me on a topic here. I want you to touch on how big has your faith been along your journey? How big has it been?
My faith has been radical, to the point to where some people can't even phantom like the things that I think. And so my faith has helped me tremendously. Growing up, my grandfather was a Baptist pastor, and so we've always been in church. But it wasn't until I was a teenager that I actually got a relationship. And when I got a relationship with God, I really leaned into, just believing, because the word says that he has plans to prosper and not harm us. And so I just stood on that, and I truly allowed, God to guide and lead me. And so I don't want to do anything that he's not a part of. And so all through my life, when I had trials and when I had tribulations, even when I had successes, I had to go back and just, make sure that everything was in line with the purpose that God has for me. And so if I did not have faith, I would have gave up a long time ago, because I was born into a situation where the cards were stacked against me. I was not supposed to be where I am. I was supposed to be somebody's wife with a bunch of kids, working at the factory or working at the mill, the chicken plant, whatever it was. Nothing against that job, nothing against that life, but that's not the life that I knew God had for me. And so I just had to lean into my faith and know, God, you are giving me some things that's in my heart. The word says that he would give us the desires of the heart and he would direct our path. You are giving me these desires. You're giving me these ambitions. Yes. And I know you're not giving me this to leave me in this small town with 500 people.
Amen.
Like, I knew it was more.
Amen. I love it. I don't think God will put anything on your heart or your mind if it's not there for you to attain. So I 1000% agree. Let's talk a little bit about your company and your business now, Brook Stemon. Can you talk a little bit about, like, what are you doing right now with your career and with the services that you guys are offering?
So basically, like I said, I still work in government. And so I was in government in HR for over 15 years. And what I recognized was I was using all of my talents and skills to train, develop, and teach their stock, their value. And so I probably a couple years ago, I was like, okay, Brooks, you're going to go into entrepreneurship. And so I opened up Deming Performance Management Solutions, which actually started as a consulting company. And what I used to do was help entrepreneurs to be able to come into entrepreneurship. But a year ago, we actually switched over to coaching. And so now I am a certified master life coach. And so what my company does is I actually coach other career professionals as well as entrepreneurs, just to help them to be able to overcome adversity, to be able to obtain their professional and personal goals.
Absolutely. I love it. So I don't know how you could, if keeping everyone information safe, but can you share some success stories of some people that you've helped before, and like what has that transformation been like just from working with you?
Yes. So one of my first clients, actually, she had started the LLC, but she didn't, she started it, but she didn't have any movement. And so basically, she came to me, and within 6 months, she had launched her boutique. She had did an event, and she's actually very successful now. What I recognize is sometimes that voice in our head can stop us cold, like fear. fear is so real to some
Yeah.
people. And so a lot of the times you just need that partner to talk you through, what your life can be like if you just allow fear to dissolve in your life and you bet on yourself. So I always ask my customers, how do you want to show up? How are you going to show up? Sometimes we can show up for everyone else, but not ourselves. It's easy to show up for someone else. You know what I'm saying? I don't have anything to lose if I show up for you. But when I show up for myself, it's a 50-50. I can win or I can lose. And so I, through my company, teach people how to show up for themselves.
Yeah, that's what I noticed. A lot of people through fear is scared to bet on themselves a lot.
Yes.
So they'll remain complacent, they'll remain stagnant, and will never even take that bold move of faith. Especially sometimes I always see that sometimes when we call ourselves believers and all these different types of things, but we don't trust ourselves. We don't trust like what you just said, like what God just told us we should be doing, but we don't act on it and take action.
Yes.
So I want to touch a little bit more on fear. Can you talk a little bit about fear and limiting beliefs? Because you just described it well. So, when someone is dealing with fear or have limiting beliefs, what are some strategies for our listeners that's listening? Or what are some tips that you could give them in regards to like getting to that next step or getting past that hurdle in their life right now?
So when it comes to fear, fear is your imagination. One scripture says that the enemy rolls around like a lion, seeking whom he may devour. Notice the word "like." It means that he can't harm you. He can't do anything. But what he does is he gives you this image, or he makes you think that he's so much bigger than what it is. And that's the same thing with, you may be trying to open a business, or you want to go back to school, or you want to move away. All the things that could happen, what the enemy does is magnify it, because
Yeah.
he wants you to think that it's going to be hard or it's going to be impossible. So the first thing that you have to do to overcome fear is you have to change your mindset. You have to have a mindset that is first, rooted on your faith, your belief. You have to know that there is greater for you, and that nothing can harm you, because God also tells us that he's given us the authority to trample over scorpions and over snakes, and nothing can hurt us. Nothing can harm us. So that physical harm that the enemy wants you to think will happen to you, or that, he wants you to think that it's impossible, you have to first change your mindset to know that that is all a lie, and that is all a mirage, and that it can't happen. And then once you change your mindset, you then have to put forth action. And what does action look like? Action looks like coming up with a plan and a strategy. Because if you don't have a plan or a strategy, then you will never walk into the purpose of what God has for you. Because we can talk about it all day, but you have to begin to make that thing work. You're going to have to begin to actually, go back to old school. 1, 2, 3. You do number 1, then you move to 2, then you move to 3. There are so many people on social media that wants to tell you, I can get you to 7 figures, 6 figures. No, we got to start. We got to start somewhere. And the thing we have to start with is step number 1.
Most definitely.
Move.
Most definitely. Dr. Brooks, can you talk a little bit of how importance of having a mentor, having a coach, accountability partner, or if you want to touch on a little bit, if you employed any of those people into your life and how they impacted your life?
Yes, so I do have a mentor. Mentorship is very important. And you always want to have a mentor that doesn't have stock in it. They doesn't have an interest in it. And the reason why is because they're always going to tell you the truth. And they're always going to tell you, even the things that may hurt. And so you want to get a mentor, someone that doesn't have a stock or an investment in you. And what I mean by that is they're not going to benefit from you making it. They're not going to benefit from you, going to the next level. Because anytime you have someone that has stock or interest in you, and that means that they're going to benefit, sometimes they're not going to tell you the truth. Sometimes they're going to tell you those things to get you to where you need to go, because it's going to benefit them. So a mentor is very important, because what a mentor does is a mentor makes sure that you are realistic, They make sure that you have the resources that you need to be able to accomplish whatever you're setting out to accomplish. And they make sure that you stay humble. You can go to your mentor and give them this good news, and they'll say, "What's next?" You're like, "Can I celebrate? Like, can I celebrate the win?" They're like, "Okay, what's next?" And so a mentor is very important. And then I also have accountability partner. Typically, accountability partner can be like a peer, someone that's on your level or someone that's above you. And so what that accountability partner does is they hold you accountable for your yeses as well as your nos, because nos are also very important, because you can't make yourself available to everyone. You can't be everything to everyone. You can't pour from an empty cup. And so what your accountability partner does is they make sure that you're getting the rest that you need. They make sure that you are taking the time for yourself. They make sure that you are not burning yourself out. And so your accountability partner is someone that looks at your life. They look at how are you living day to day? Because, a lot of people can get on the stage and that's all that people see, but you need that person that you could be vulnerable with. You need that person that you can say, "I'm having a bad day. Something is going on. I don't feel right. I feel off." And so that's what that accountability partner is for. That accountability partner is someone that's going to make sure that regardless of the day that you had, you're going to reach your destiny. You're going to, achieve those things that you have set out to achieve.
Thank you for that. So you had the opportunity to release a book, Six Pillars of Resilience. Can you
Yes.
talk a little bit about this book and what should a reader get from your book?
So, Six Pillars of Resilience, it talks about probably a 5-year span of my life. During that 5-year period, I experienced loss after loss after loss. During that period, I was administratively withdrawn from my doctorate program. I lost my best friend to cancer. During that time, my mom was extremely sick and she had to move in. And so I was her caregiver. Also, during that time, my husband was living separate from me because he was about to retire from the army and we did not want to uproot our family. And so,
Mm.
what I recognized was that even though I was experiencing back to back to back trauma, I was able to overcome those things. And so, what I did was through self examination, I identified 6 competencies that I possess that helped me to be resilient. And so, in the book, it just talks about how life happens. And in the book, it also just talks about, these different competencies that if you possess or if you work on possessing, it can help you quickly overcome setbacks in your life.
Absolutely. Thank you. So as we get ready to wrap up here, you have an amazing story, coming up from the South and attaining all of these big, big, big major goals that you didn't let any limiting beliefs hold you back. I'm so happy to hear that. For our listeners that's listening that may have experienced some of the same things you've experienced or know someone that's experiencing some of the same things that you've been through, can you share some life lessons, some tips, and some takeaways that they could have?
Yes. So I would say first, always trust yourself. Anything that you can control, you have to trust yourself that you have the ability to be able to do it. A lot of the times we are so insecure because if we, experience any type of rejection or any type of, setbacks or abandonments, we begin to carry that. So you have to release that. You cannot take that into your next. And so I would just say, trust yourself and believe in yourself that you can do whatever it is that you set out to accomplish. We are in an age to where we have so many resources at our disposal. And so you just have to connect with those people or those organizations that can help you pursue whatever it is that you're desiring to pursue. Of course, life happens, but a lot of the things that happen to us, unless we die, is temporary.
Yes.
Everything is so temporary. And so you have to be able to identify those things that are temporary and not cause them to make permanent decisions in a temporary situation. And so by doing that, you have to slow down and you have to process it. And you can't make decisions quickly, especially decisions that can have a long-term impact. So I just always tell people, just sit in it for a minute. It's okay to sit in something for a minute. We are so used to moving so fast that we forget to just sit and process things because we're not to be hasty. And so you have to slow down, take a deep breath and process it and go back to the drawing board and re-strategize. I've had to re-strategize so many times. And what I learned is if I take the time limit off it, I can accomplish it. Because sometimes it's the time limit that it puts so much pressure on us. And so sometimes it's okay to have short and long-term goals, but sometimes you just have to take the time frame off and watch God work.
Most definitely. You're speaking to me there. I had to do some of the same things that you just said when it comes to just having patience. A lot of my friends actually tell me like, you have a very high level of patience because of just, but I let God work, just like you said, just let God do his thing, you know? So if anybody wanted to book you for a speaking, book you for a podcast, or just to connect with you and your company to get coach, get consulting, or get mentorship or anything from you, how could they get a hold of you?
I have a website, brooksdeming.com, and then my email is support@brooksdeming.com.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Brooks, it's been an honor to have you here. It's been a pleasure to hear your story, for you to be totally transparent and just be vulnerable with your story. You know, like we said before, the ultimate idea of this is just share your story on these different platforms where you can at least make an impact. So I just want to tell you thank you for coming on and being a guest on the Overcome University podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for having a platform to where people can show people it doesn't happen overnight. Like everything is a process. And if you just put in the work, if you just put in the work and you just show up for yourself, you will reach your goals. You'll reach them.
Absolutely. Until next time, guys, we drop episodes weekly. God bless.
Can't complain at all. Couple dollars in my pocket, know it come and go. Been working on my body, getting healthier. Thank God for clarity.